Hi, I'm Florian. I'm a professional options and futures trader, and this is my weekly watch list for the week starting on the 21st of April, 2025. There's some interesting setups in the market right now, and I would say we get right into it. So I'm going to start off with a little preview of what I think SPY could do this week. Looking at the 4 hour on SPY, it looks pretty boring. Looking at the daily, it looks even more boring, right? You have these strong highs here, which still seem to be supporting throughout the days, and they were last week. But there's also no real upside continuation here, as these highs are rejecting cleanly as well, right? If we go down to the hourly, you can see that there was an hourly lower high set, but I wouldn't go short into these highs. So unless we open up below and then get a bounce rejecting these lows, these highs from below, as such, like opening up here and then bouncing for the lower high continuation, I think there's no real play on SPY right now, as the long doesn't really seem that attractive either. The QQQ, on the other hand, is below this interesting low zone, which stems all the way from the September lows and was previously an all-time high zone as well. And I think it's starting to make a really nice hourly stretched reversal lower high. So I think downside continuation on the Qs, maybe like consolidating a little bit on of the open here above this 443 level, could then lead to some downside here on the hourly. I think the 4 hours looking pretty nice for the breakdown after this big reversal candle. You're going into these highs, which is definitely something to be kept in mind, and therefore careful about potential holds. But it does seem like there's a lot of downside pressure on this, and therefore it could break below. If that's too risky of a short for you, then I would just simply wait, and there's just not much in the broader market here for you this week, unfortunately. But keeping with the same theme of broader market, let's look at IWM. IWM, I think, does have an interesting long setup, even though the rejection wick here on the last 4 hour candle doesn't look as nice, but it's clearly holding these highs here on the wick. So I do think there's some upside continuation to be had. These lows seem to be holding pretty aggressively, and essentially, just like last week, the retest of this area, the 197 area, looks pretty strong. But other than that, I think the daily is looking pretty good for a daily higher low continuation. If we can get a nice entry here, like if we just kind of move lower off the open on Monday, and then but hold and then move higher for kind of even a head and shoulders kind of pattern, I think this could be interesting for the move higher. Oil did not reject last week, but actually broke through. And now the question is, if we see pullbacks into here, can these highs hold? Or if we reject these pretty big lows here, as you can see, there was a pretty big range here. These lows are currently being attacked. If we reject those, I think there could still be downside to be had on oil. But also looking at the daily here, you can clearly see this upside pressure breaking out to the top. So the break and retest for the ascending triangle continuation here does seem to be on the table on gold. Obviously very volatile when it comes to like geopolitical tensions or decisions. So for that, do be careful about that. Also, this is being recorded on a Saturday. There was a deal reached between the US and Ukraine for their natural resources. I don't know what's going to happen in the following hours or days, which means markets could open completely different to what I'm currently expecting. I'm just going to go based on what I see in the market right now, not what I think the market will open at. But with that being said, let's move on to stocks. There's not much in the market this week, in my opinion. It does seem pretty boring. There are a few setups which I can see right now, but you're just going to have to wait for the market to develop here. Google, I think, the trend switch play here for the long seems more interesting. Tries to hold this area here again, these recent lows. The 4 hour just seems a bit overextended. There's no real bounce in this. I don't really like a short at the lows going into the zone here. What I could imagine though is kind of like this turnaround here, breaking above the afternoon highs, then holding these recent highs from the madness over here for the kind of inverse head and shoulders for the move higher, at which point obviously you've got to watch out for this zone which was rejected previously. But I think the long is on the table here if we do see that kind of upside movement out of Google. Next, Microsoft is actually a pretty strong short in my opinion here. If you go down to go up to the 4 hour, it looks like it's just going to flush lower. And on the hourly, there just seems to be such a strong downside pressure here, and it's breaking through these lows. I wouldn't go short right here because I think there is still hold potential here. But if we were to break below and then just get a clean break and retest of these lows, of the Wednesday lows, and then the low over here, just break lower, just flush lower basically, and then get the retest for the rejection lower again. I think that could be a nice short on Monday if it does develop. Next, Coinbase is kind of like ambiguous. I think you can really go both ways here. If we go up to the daily could be still be setting up the daily low or high, rejecting these lows from earlier in March. But also on if you go down to the 4 hour, you get this really nice reversal candle. And it does seem to be kind of breaking out of this bull flag here. And on the hourly, I think if it can hold above these lows at the 172 area, it can actually set up a nice hourly higher low, whatever form that does take, which could then lead to some upside pressure as we kind of breaking out of this bull flag on the hourly, trying to make the higher low here. We could even see immediate upside follow through on the open on Monday. So I think that is a very interesting play to watch. Daily looks a bit more short, but only if it actually does break lower. Otherwise, I think the recapturing of these lows, which just seem to be pretty possible here, is the strongest setup in my opinion on Coinbase. And next up is Amazon. Amazon broke below these kind of lows here on the Wednesday session, and then just continue to move lower on Thursday. Bounces into here do seem okay, as it's clearly a zone of interest. The daily doesn't look like too good though, to be totally honest. So if we see the immediate retest on like Monday, I wouldn't be super interested. Maybe just like move lower a little bit and then see the pullback into the level on in a few days, like throughout the week, is more interesting. But otherwise, I don't think Amazon is all that interesting. Shorting here, the lows just doesn't seem interesting, as it's just holding these really strong wick lows here. Like there's really strong buying potential here, obviously. So I wouldn't be interested in a short only if you do reach back up to 176 area. Nvidia has still been trading kind of shit, I'm not gonna lie. The only play I really see on Nvidia is there clearly seems to be an interesting level here at the 104 to like 105 area, as it was rejecting here already on Thursday as well. The 4 hour looks a bit more short in my opinion, but shorting it at the lowest doesn't seem interesting. The daily looks a bit more long, so recaptures of this area could also lead to some upside pressure, making a daily high low. But in that case, you would have to break above here properly first, like reach 107, and then see the pullback for Nvidia to really switch the trend here, as it still has this opening gap here of the Wednesday news about tariffs. Apple is still short here. It's still struggling at this previous all-time high zone after moving back below it. I think it's still one of the best short setups probably in the market here. The daily doesn't look the greatest, but the 4 hour is starting to potentially make this lower high here for the flush lower. I do think this could flush lower pretty aggressively. I don't like this wick here on the close on Thursday, but otherwise it's already setting up the hourly lower high as well. So downside continuation now of Apple does seem possible, as it's also holding this kind of trend. But there's something to be kept in mind. Apple has not been trading that nicely, like not moving nicely. So definitely something to watch out for this week. Then next up, we have Palantir here. I think Palantir, you have to go up to the daily to see kind of what I'm on about. It's the clear long. It's back above these highs, which it developed throughout March. Last time it was above them, it failed to hold. But this time around, it seems to already starting to try to hold here. We have earnings in, by the looks of it, 2 weeks time, so that should give us enough time. If you go down to the 4 hour, it's already also setting up this nice reversal candle here. There seems to be some upside continuation in the market here, moving back above these highs nicely. On the hourly, there does seem to be some breakdown potential here. Watch out for that, as it's like clearly struggling to move higher. But if it were to like open up above, for example, and then pull back, hold, like wick hold this area, I think there's a really strong hold. Then next, Delta Airlines. Delta Airlines is still looking at these lows here, but there seems to be some upside pressure here for the ascending triangle. I do feel like this is more short though. I don't see the long for sure. So I would want to see maybe a trend switch here, breaking a trend line, properly confirming it, and then seeing the lower high continuation. The hourly is already setting up pretty short here. If you want to aggressively short into the trend line, be my friend, but maybe wait for some more confirmation and then actually see the break and retest of the trend line or these lows here, or like a deeper pullback. I think that's a bit more interesting in the market right now. Next up, a banking stock, JP Morgan, struggled at these recent lows here and now setting up the 4 hour lower high for the continuation lower, at least into these lows at the 225. The hourly is already starting to reject this double top area here clearly on the Thursday session actually, and had the breakdown into the close. I wouldn't be surprised if this opens up lower and then just flushes lower. It does seem to be a pretty strong setup where that just seems to make sense, but that is to be kept in mind for sure. Next up, we have Salesforce. Salesforce just is such strong downside pressure here. I thought maybe the retest to 270s would be a bit more interesting, but it seems to kind of have completed that on that Wednesday session with the Trump news. And now, like, I think it is so obvious that this downside pressure is really strong. So a break below this, also on the hourly now, setting up this clear downside pressure, not even trying to like properly get push off these lows, just to break and retest, even on the lower time frames for this continuation lower, seems really strong. Salesforce spreads aren't the best, so do keep that in mind when trading these options for sure. Marvell is next play here on my watch list, as it's kind of rejecting these lows here. I think the 4 hour is setting up okay for the lower high continuation. I would want to see some more strength here though. Like I wouldn't short the break of this 51 level, but rather like actual see the lower high here and then move lower, as it just moved off this level pretty aggressively here on Wednesday, which I wouldn't want to like see holding again. Otherwise, I think this is a short setup in the market here. Visa is already starting to reject the head and shoulders here, the neckline, and now making the lower high for the continuation lower. The setup is so strong that I don't even care about the potential support zones here below. Like they are there and there are levels to take profit at, but like I wouldn't be too worried about them. And I think this is short indeed because it's just setting up so cleanly on the hourly where you can just trust it. And overall, it is still making this daily lower high here, unless it can hold this 320 area on proper retest. This is more short than it is long. I don't know if there will be an entry or where the entry will be, as shorting it here, even if it were to open up at the Thursday close, risk would be quite high and the risk to reward wouldn't be quite there. So you would probably want to see if there is a short on this. Otherwise, if there's no entry, you kind of have to let it go. And it's just, if you hadn't called it on Thursday, which I didn't because I wasn't quite aware of it, you're going to struggle potentially going into the week to find a setup here. Snow is still kind of struggling at these lows here and just doesn't get followed through higher. 4 hour does seem to be like wanting to sell off here. And I really like this pause candle on the 4 hour here below the lows. And I do think if it just continues to make this hourly lower high here and just continue to sell lower, it can get some downside further through, at least into the 140s. And therefore, I do want to watch this play as well. Roblox has broken above these recent lows here that I was watching. So any pullback holds of this area now are clear longs, in my opinion, especially if the market can reverse as well, as this is quite a volatile stock. You would want to watch out. But it is really important that it does hold these lows now on the retest. I'm not too interested about the straight continuation here, as I think the daily is just in need of this pullback hold here. So do keep that in mind and don't like FOMO into the position if it does open up higher. Citi report earnings last week, pretty boring in my opinion, but it did reject the nice lows here on the retest already post earnings reaction. So maybe like moving higher and then making a lower high for the proper trends, which could be interesting here. But it is kind of, as you can see, a bit choppy right now, as the entire market really is. Same with MS. MS is about above like some nice lows here. But I do think that the hourly is setting up pretty nicely for like a head and shoulders kind of pattern here. But then again, I'm not sure where the entry would be. It would be a bit more for like a short term, not too much of a move kind of play into the 106. And therefore, the risk does have to be tight here for the continuation lower. So I'm not too sure where that would actually go for MS here. Then Roku is like Roku clearly has downside pressure, but it just doesn't want to move lower. In which case, it's just not a nice stock to trade right now. If you look going down to like lower time frames, you can just see how like jumpy and all over the place it is. It's just not a nice stock to trade, even though the setup is kind of there. If it were to like move lower here, but it's just one to have on like an eye on if the setup's there. But the setup does have to be clean for the kind of options that Roku does have. Then Oracle is kind of looking short here. As you can see on the Thursday session, it's starting to flush lower here. Wouldn't be surprised about a straight sell continuation of the open, or even opening up lower here on Monday. In which case, a break and retest of this Wednesday low could be interesting. But otherwise, maybe wait for the bounce higher here, even though that would kind of ruin this downside momentum. So it is kind of sell continuation now, or just wait a little bit longer, I think. I think we're going into like kind of the last stock here, MasterCard. I think it's still like looking at these lows here and clearly doesn't get followed through higher. similar to Visa. Like there seems to be some downside pressure on this. On MasterCard, though, we do need the trend switch first, which hasn't occurred yet. It has on Visa, but it just hasn't on MasterCard yet. So I would want to see that happen first, like move lower, then make the lower high on the hourly for the actual potential lower. And then again, there's like strong support below though here at this 500 area, the 200 daily below. So I'm not sure about like how much follow through that can really get if the setup's not as strong as it is on Visa. Then I have some other names as well that I just want to keep like eyes on, which I'll just like name. So Robinhood, I think, for the rejection, Walmart for the continuation higher or rejection, Affirm just because I think it's an interesting low zone, but it's just been trading like choppy as hell as well. PayPal for the move higher here, holding these lows, recapturing these highs, but PayPal's been trading shit as well. Next, Broadcom, no real setup here in my eyes. If you go down to the hourly, you can just see, you see nothing. I don't really see anything, to be totally honest. If you see something, please let me know, because I think Broadcom is a nice stock to trade. AMD is just kind of in the middle of nowhere. Needs to see some progression first. Disney just chopping around. If it breaks below here, maybe. Otherwise, no. Qualcomm still waiting for the retest of the 150s. Reddit still will have that IPO base hold idea, but as long as it's below these lows, it's just not long. Copper just doing like holding back above after not rejecting, but otherwise not very too interesting in my opinion. Uber, I was really watching Uber the entire week for the long. It just really struggles to get follow through higher, and now I just don't like the look of it. The 4 hour looks pretty decent, but I don't like the hourly, and I don't know if this high hold is really enough for me to get interested in long again. And then Intel is still trying to hold this zone, but as you can see, I told you on last week's watch list, watch out for Intel. It's not trading nicely. I do think it has potential to switch trend here though, as it's kind of attempting this high low. So if we do see some upside out of Intel, I think this could be strong, but really do be patient on this. And then lastly, Pepsi, try to break below these lows, recapture them, maybe high low back above, but otherwise this is moving into like a really choppy area, which just doesn't seem all that great in my opinion. With that being said, that was my weekly watch list. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys found some setups that are interesting to you. I'm not expecting the most interesting week, to be honest. The market is not really setting up for like a lot of progression, but we could still nonetheless see it. You'll see my daily watch list videos throughout the week if anything changes. The trade recaps will be coming, so stay tuned for that. I'm also thinking about doing some other videos, not just like pure charts, but also some like mental sides of trading, ideas, strategies, that kind of idea. So if you're interested in that, let me know. But with that being said, stay safe out there, traders. STG.